Are you comfortable with the increment in tariff? Because Nigerians are saying this is criminally, planned. There is no justification for increment at this time that there is a biting economic effect. What are the parameters for placing some groups on bands A, B, C, or whatever letters that they are placing? Who came up with that kind of plan? And do you think is in the interest of Nigerian consumers? Let's hear your reaction, Nick Agule.
So, straight off, to answer your question, the tariff increase is not to the interest of Nigerian consumers. This whole banding thing, to me, I don't want to call it a scam, but I know that if you are in band A, automatically every kilowatt hour of electricity you enjoy will be at the new rate, 225. But nobody can guarantee you those 20 to 24 hours of electricity. And there's really nothing you can do about it. Why? Because we're talking about 3,000 megawatts. If you divide 3,000 megawatts by 36 states and the FCT, that is 37. I've worked the maths.
Yes.
It comes to 81 megawatts per state. 81 megawatts per state. At least in Nigeria, I believe that every state has a minimum of about 5 million people in population. All right. Then you look at a place like Qatar, 2.8 million people. They're on 12,000 megawatts. So 2.8 million people on 12,000 megawatts, and then 5 million people in Benue, for instance, 81 megawatts. Check 81 with 12,000. You understand what I mean? So it's grossly inadequate. And it is from these 3,000 megawatts that the Minister of Finance wants to find money to pay all the 23 GENCOs, the TCN, the 11 DISCOs, MBET, and everybody that has come onto the power sector from these 3,000 megawatts. If this 3,000 megawatts increases to 20,000 megawatts, you will see that the unit cost of electricity will come down. You know why? Let's give an example. The MD of a generating company that is currently generating, let's say, 2,000 megawatts. Even if that generating company increases production to 10,000 megawatts, it's the same salary you are paying that MD. True or false? Yeah. But now, his salary is being divided by 2,000 megawatts. Even if production goes to 10,000 or 20,000 megawatts, it's the same salary. So you see that the unit cost of production will come down. These distribution companies are the biggest corporates. One, they are the ones that are expected to take the money. You understand? They are the ones that are expected to take the money from the consumer and pass it through the value chain. So they pay themselves, they pay transmission and pay the GENCOs. They have not got the infrastructure in place to take the money. So aggregate commercial and collection losses are big and they are being put on the consumer. The consumer is suffering this thing. We had one NEPA, only one NEPA with one MD, one set of executives. Now we have 23 GENCOs, one TCN, 11 DISCOs with MDs, with executives, with offices, with cars on the same 3,000 megawatts. That's what Nick will say cost reflective tariff, forcing those costs, escalated costs, down the throat of Nigerians. Remember that these DISCOs, like I said, they are the biggest corporate. One of the reasons is because they took foreign loans. You know, government sold the licenses in dollars. So they took foreign loans in millions of dollars to buy the licenses. As at the time they took the loans about 10 years ago, it was 150 naira to $1. Do you understand? Today, for them to repay that loan, they need to find more than 1,000 naira to get $1 to pay the loan. So their costs have gone up more than 10 times only by the foreign exchange.
So now you're saying that directly that they are pushing
those costs into their books, and once they push those costs into the books, NEC looks at their books and say these are your costs. We must have cost reflective tariff, and NEC now increases the tariff to be able to recover those costs.
But the central
so why is no one talking about this?
This is why we are talking about it here.
Yeah.
And we hope they are listening to us.
Because you mentioned something very interesting. The central bank governor, by his pedigree as an economist, should be aware of all these things you're talking about. Because whether you, how will I put it, whether you like it or not, NEC is arguing that this tariff increase has come to stay, and whether we like it or not, is going to improve the energy sector in Nigeria, vis-a-vis, what they are planning to do. But the fact on ground is that there are causative issues, causative factors that have not been tackled. So why would NEC want to do this tariff increase as against working out these technical issues which the Minister of Power, Mr. Adelabu, has not even, acknowledged, even though he claims that, Nigeria can do far better than what it is doing. So do you feel, coming from your position as an oil and gas expert, that the Minister of Power is actually qualified to hold that position, given what is happening in the power sector?
I'm not in a position to judge his qualification.
No, I'm not saying judge his qualifications,
position.
but do you think he's actually going to give that solution to this power energy crisis that we
Do you see his disposition as being competent to handle the power crisis in Nigeria?
So if I read the body language of the Minister of Power, I think he's getting a few things in place. For instance, I watched this interview on channels where they said, "Are we not letting out transmission?" He said no. And to me, that's a problem, because that transmission is a real key.
So what makes you think they want to hold on to the transmission if they know they can't manage it effectively? So is there any reason they would want to withhold it?
So for me, it goes beyond the minister. For me, it goes right to the table of the president. President Tinubu, when he was governor of Lagos State, had an ambitious plan for power in Lagos with floating barges. He had this deal with Enron where they were to, it was a thermal solution where they would power turbines on floating barges in the Atlantic with gas and produce power. And that plan was truncated by President Obasanjo. So for me, I believe that ambitious plan that President Tinubu had in Lagos gives me the confidence that he understands the value of power to an economy. And it is for him to really just devote perhaps an hour or maybe a day of his time and organize the power sector in Nigeria. Because the power sector in Nigeria, as we've been discussing here, is unstructured, is here and there, too many problems. Like sometimes you hear about gas supply, and like Prof was saying, why should we be talking about gas supply when we are flaring our gas? You understand? Then you hear about all this liquidity, all of this. These things is because we're talking about 3,000 megawatts. If this power increases to 20,000-30,000 megawatts, everybody will have enough money to solve the liquidity problems. But you are having a liquidity problem now because we're talking 3,000 megawatts, and the 3,000 megawatts, you are talking about people not paying. All these things will be solved if President Tinubu is able to sit down, devote a day, and say, this is the plan for power in Nigeria, and I'm going to see it through. But let's not forget that President Tinubu has done one thing. One of the first things he did was to sign the Electricity Act, electricity bill, into law. So now we have an Electricity Act. What is the difference that this act is bringing? Before the act, you couldn't generate, transmit, and distribute power where there's national grid. But you couldn't do it in Makudi now because it's covered by national grid. The act has now opened it that you can do it even where there's national grid.
So do you think the states have capacity?
That's where I'm going to. So it's not only now for the subnational government, which is the state and local government, but even the private sector. So here is the opportunity for Benue State. Governor Alia needs to cash in on this immediately because I'm not hearing anything about it. What does he need to do? First, he needs to send a bill to the State House of Assembly to domesticate the Electricity Act in Benue. Yeah? Number two, he needs to set up a regulatory body. That is the Benue State equivalent of NEC. Alright? Number three, he now needs to open up the space and start making sweet deals to power operators around the world to come in here. Benue is having all sources of energy. The one that is the most beautiful is hydro, like Prof did say.
Are you now talking about PPP, as a private partnership, or
it should open the space? So it should open the space. There are some investors that would like the government to go with them. And that is where we talk about PPP.
Because you both had asserted here that government is a bad business.
So there is here
Yes.
I can tell you the difference.
Yes.
If you give me a minute, I can show you a clear difference in this Nigeria. You'll see what I'm saying.
Please go ahead.
Do you see the NNPC? The NNPC is fully owned by government, fully managed by government. It's not working well, as we agree. The NLNG is owned by government, but not managed by government. So the NLNG is a PPP between the government and international oil companies.
Yes.
Is doing excellently well, delivering dividends in the billions to government of dollars. All right. So a PPP where government takes ownership but is not managing is okay. There's no problem with that. Do you understand?
Yes.
So if Governor Alia opens the space, he can do PPPs. He can open up for private sector, giving them sweet deals. The thing that he shouldn't do is to set up a government electricity business, because that's not going to work.
Okay.
And I was about to talk about hydro.
Yes.
You know, in this Benue, and I have traversed almost all the local governments in Benue. I think I've been to all of them. There is no local government or there's no settlement in this Benue, a town, a village or hamlet, where there's no flowing river between a kilometer or two of. Governor Alia should set up the space, bring in people, just be damming these rivers one after the other, one at a time, because it's capital intensive. If you dam a river, do you know what you're going to get from there? You get hydroelectricity, which people are talking about. You get irrigation. Irrigation means farmers don't need to wait for rainy season again. You farm 12 months of the year. You get fishing, you get pipe-borne water, and you can create tourism around that. So this space is there.
But these are long-term projects,
Yeah.
Prof. You know, we've been crying about the dredging of the river.